started as a quiet Sunday morning. The sun was just beginning to cast golden streaks across the river that ran through my property, its waters glinting like liquid glass. For years, I had maintained a modest wooden bridge that connected my property to the main road. A bridge that my neighbors, the local HOA elites, often criticized for being unsightly and out of place. I never minded their opinions, mostly because I kept to myself and respected their flashy mansions as long as they respected my privacy. But I had no idea their sense of entitlement would lead to outright destruction. That morning, I heard the distant rumble of heavy machinery before I even saw it. Curiosity pulled me toward the riverbank, and what I saw made my stomach drop. The HOA had sent a crew to bulldoze my bridge. The massive metal claw of an excavator slammed into the wooden structure with a deafening crack, splinters flying into the air, while the operator wore a smug grin as though he were tearing down some public nuisance rather than private property. I could see through the HOA president's expression, Karen, the self-proclaimed queen of our neighborhood, that she was savoring this moment. She'd always been obsessed with control, with dictating how the land should look. But today she'd crossed a line. "You can't do this," I shouted, running toward the crew. But they didn't flinch. Karen stood beside the machine, arms crossed, her designer sunglasses glinting in the sunlight. "Rules are rules," she said coolly. And that bridge was an eyesore. Consider it upgraded landscaping. I clenched my fists. There was no reasoning with her, and arguing would accomplish nothing. I turned away, my mind racing. Most people don't know this about me, but I've spent the past decade working on water management technology, privately maintaining a dam upstream that controls the flow of the river. It's a tool I've always used responsibly, to prevent flooding during heavy rains, to conserve wildlife habitats, and, admittedly, sometimes to make a point to those who underestimated me. By the time I returned home, the sun was higher, and my anger had settled into a cold, precise calculation. I didn't want violence or even confrontation. I wanted results that would make Karen reconsider her obsession with control. I accessed the controls at my dam, double-checked the channels, and carefully opened the gates that released water at a measured pace. Not enough to endanger anyone, but enough to demonstrate the consequences of careless destruction. Karen's mansion sat majestically along the lakeside, a $6 million fortress she flaunted during every HOA meeting. From her balcony, she probably believed she could watch the world bend to her whims. By mid-afternoon, the first hints of unusual water levels began creeping toward her estate. A gentle murmur of concern among her staff grew into panicked calls. I watched from my porch as Karen ran to her terrace, her designer heels clicking across the marble floors, her face a mask of disbelief. The lake had risen faster than any rainfall could explain, flooding her ornate gardens and creeping dangerously toward the house's lower levels. From the safety of my land, I finally spoke, through a loudspeaker I occasionally use for wildlife announcements. "Karen, perhaps next time, think before bulldozing someone else's property." My voice was calm, almost casual, yet it carried across the water, reaching her ears in perfect clarity. She shouted back, incredulous and furious, but there was nothing she could do. Her crew scrambled, sandbags flew, and the HOA board members who had backed her decisions scrambled to understand what was happening. By the time the water receded, her mansion had suffered significant flooding. Luxurious rugs ruined, furniture soaked, the lakeside gardens washed away. Her rage was palpable, but it was also a lesson she wouldn't forget. I never harmed anyone physically. I never broke the law because technically, I was in full control of my property and my water rights. But Karen and her HOA had learned a valuable lesson. Control is an illusion, and sometimes the person you underestimate is the one who holds the real power. After the floodwaters receded, I rebuilt my bridge. Not because I needed it, but because it symbolized something important: resilience, boundaries, and the quiet satisfaction of standing your ground without compromising your principles. Karen? She eventually had to call in contractors, insurance adjusters, and even the county authorities to assess the damage. Her arrogance had met its match, not in brute force, but in quiet, calculated strategy. From my porch, I watched the river flow, the sun glinting on the water's surface once more. Peace returned to my land, and the HOA learned the hard way that some bridges, both literal and metaphorical, are not theirs to destroy.